October 14, 1943, 25,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The B-17 flying fortress jerks sideways as black flak explodes across the formation like hellfire blooming in a steel sky. In the tail gunner Esbubla coffin, made of plexiglass and freezing air 20, 2-year-old Staff Sergeant Michael Romano grips the twin 50-caliber machine guns with numb hands. His oxygen mask cuts into frozen skin. His breath comes in ragged gasps. Outside, a Messerschmitt Bf-109 screams through his crosshairs at 400 miles per hour. Romano fires. The guns roar, shaking his entire body. Tracer rounds arc through empty sky, passing clean beneath the German fighter. The Bf-109 banks lazily, untouched, and vanishes into cloud cover. Romano slams his fist against the gun mount. Not hatred for the enemy. Hatred for this worthless ring-and-bead gun sight that's supposed to keep him alive. Hatred for a targeting system designed in 1918 that expects him to fight supersonic death machines with technology older than his father. This isn't the first time. Romano has fired thousands of rounds into nothing. He's watched dozens of German fighters waltz through his kill zone untouched. And somewhere between the thunder of guns and the whistle of shrapnel tearing through aluminum, a question burns hotter than the barrel of his 50 cal. Why does the United States Army Air Forces builder of America's most legendary bomber still send men into combat with sights that couldn't hit anything? That question will drive Romano into forbidden territory. Illegal modifications, secret engineering, an act of mechanical rebellion that will nearly get him court-martialed. An act that, against direct orders, will triple the lethality of the B-17's most vulnerable position. And it starts with blood. By October 1943, the 8th Air Force is hemorrhaging bombers over occupied Europe. The 2nd Schweinfurt raid dispatches 291 B-17s into German airspace. 60 never return. Many more limp home with dead engines, shredded wings, corpses in the gun turrets. Tail gunners are dying faster than any other crew position. They sit alone in the most isolated station on the aircraft, manning 2 machine guns in a bubble of plexiglass that offers zero protection. They face evolved Luftwaffe tactics, coordinated attacks from 6 o'clock level, fighters riding straight into the tail cone, firing point blank, peeling off, circling back for another pass, and the tail guns aren't helping. American bomber doctrine inherited its defensive strategy from naval warfare, overlapping fields of fire. Volume over precision saturate the sky with lead. But at 25,000 feet, reality is different. The guns are static, the men are freezing, and the gun sight of primitive ring-and post system has no compensation for aircraft speed. No lead calculation, no prediction for where the enemy will be when bullets arrive 3 seconds later. In combat, the average hit rate for a B-17 tail gunner in 1943 is under 8%. Less than 1 bullet in 12 finds a target. Each bomber carries 4,000 rounds in the tail alone. They're not failing to shoot, they're shooting blind. Michael Romano is not supposed to solve this problem. He's not an engineer, not an inventor, not a scientist. Born in Pittsburgh, he dropped out of school at 17 and worked in a metallurgical shop before the draft. He has zero background in optical systems, aircraft assembly, or ballistic calculations. What he has are hands that can weld, shape, steel, observe problems, and fix them. And at 5 feet 6 inches and 140 pounds, he's perfectly sized for the cramped nightmare of the tail gunner station. The Army Air Forces select him for the job. 6 weeks of training, then straight into combat. August 19, 1943, Romano's first mission. Target, German airfields in occupied France. He fires 1,000 rounds into empty sky. Smoke, muzzle flash, spent brass cascading around his boots. Not a single confirmed hit, not even close. By his 4th mission, October 4th over Frankfurt, Romano understands the truth. When his crew inspects the bomber after landing, they count 78 flak holes, a fist-sized tear in the starboard wing, and 1 dead waist gunner. Romano fired 600 rounds during the mission. 0 confirmed hits. That night in the debriefing tent, Romano overhears a pilot talking to the squadron operations officer. The pilot's voice is flat, exhausted. Matter of fact, tail gunners are dead weight. We'd be better off dropping sandbags back there. That sentence transforms frustration into fury. That sentence starts the rebellion. Romano's idea doesn't begin in a workshop or engineering manual. It begins during a maintenance check, standing inside the tail of the B-17, staring into the curved plexiglass housing. He notices his own reflection, twisted, distorted, but stable even as he moves. He leans left. The reflection shifts but holds steady in the curvature of the glass. It's almost predictive, like a sight. Romano doesn't know the physics of mirrors or optics, but he knows something is catastrophically wrong with the current system. And this reflection, this natural stabilizer, gives him a spark. What if he used a mirror to project the sight onto where the enemy was going to be? It's crude, rough, based on intuition, not theory, but it's enough. October 7th, 1943. Romano approaches Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, the crew chief, with a proposal that sounds insane. Help him fabricate a mirror-based reflector sight in the tail using whatever parts they can steal or scavenge. Kellerman stares at him. "You want to bolt a fighter sight into a bomber?" Romano nods. "If it works, I'll live longer. So will you." They begin their unauthorized operation beneath the radar of Army Air Force's regulations. Kellerman scavenges a discarded reflector sight from a wrecked P-47 Thunderbolt. Romano locates 2 small mirrors from a broken Norden bombsight housing. They spend nights carving aluminum mounts, positioning angled glass behind the gun barrels, sealing wires to prevent vibration. It barely fits. At full pitch, Romano's helmet almost knocks it loose. But when he lines up the guns and peers through the sight at the horizon, the reticle floats cleanly across the arc of the tail cone, predicting exactly where a moving aircraft will be. They don't submit paperwork, they don't ask permission. They don't tell their pilot, Lieutenant James Holbrook, until the morning of their next mission. Even Holbrook thinks it's stupid, but he lets them fly. Target, Gelsenkirchen, German industrial complex deep in the Ruhr Valley. The formation crosses the Rhine, and less than 20 minutes later, German fighters swarm like hornets. A Bf-109 screams in from below, canopy glinting in sunlight. Romano watches it approach. For the first time, instead of chasing the fighter with his gun barrels, he lets it glide into the reticle. He squeezes the trigger. The Bf-109 jolt's puff of white smoke erupts from the engine cowling, then flames. The fighter spins downward, trailing fire, and vanishes into cloud cover. Romano's voice crackles over the intercom, calm and cold. "Tail gunner, 1 confirmed." For the first time, the crew believes on the way back to Bosingborn, the numbers tell the story. Romano fired 480 rounds and scored 3 confirmed hits. The average tail gunner on the mission fired 900 rounds. 0 kills. When they land, they're greeted not by cheers but by Captain Richard Voss, the squadron armament officer, red-faced and furious. Modifications to weapon systems without authorization are a direct violation of AAF technical regulation. Voss threatens immediate court-martial, but before he can drag Romano to the commanding officer, the rumor spreads. Gunners crowd around the bomber. Someone asks if they can copy it. Kellerman says yes. By the time Major William Calhoun, operations officer, convenes an emergency briefing, half the base knows about the mirror sight. Calhoun is practical, not ideological. Our hit rate is under 10%. That's worse than not firing at all. Before I court-martial this kid, I want to know if his idea works. Colonel Stanley Ray, commanding officer of the 91st Bomb Group, nods. Cold, calculating. "We're losing men faster than we can train them. Let him keep the sight." But he flies with gun cameras. From now on, they're not endorsing it. They're desperate enough to tolerate it. October 12, 1943, Romano flies his 4th mission with the new system. Target, Kiel. 5 Luftwaffe fighters make passes on the bomb group. Only 1 gets through. Romano's tail camera shows 4 bursts, landing center mass on a Focke-Wulf 190 at 400 yards. His rounds walk the fighter down in a controlled, predictive arc. After the mission, Calhoun passes the gun camera film across the table in silence. He hit more in 3 seconds than most of my men do all day. Even Voss, the same officer who threatened arrest asks to see how it works. That same day, Kellerman and Romano set up a demonstration model in the hangar. Dozens watch as the projected reticle locks onto a moving target smoothly, predictively, as if it belonged there all along. The verdict comes down from Colonel Ray. This isn't regulation, but it's effective. Will allow fabrication for volunteer gunners, pending manufacturing review. Romano, who nearly faced court-martial, is now being asked to teach others. The mirror reflector sight isn't elegant. It's not standardized. It uses scrap parts, has blind spots, requires manual adjustment. But it triples the effective hit probability of a B-17 tailgunner. Why does it matter? Because it proves something far more dangerous than a new weapon. That Army Air Force's doctrine is failing, and a lone enlisted man with a wrench and a mirror beat it. Romano's mirror sight exposes a truth command desperately avoided that frontline innovation. Not factory production saves lives in a war built on industrial might and top-down design. This is heresy, and it works. By early 1944, formal engineering teams issue revised lead computing reflector sights based on Romano's prototype. They appear first in B-17G models and retrofit kits throughout the 8th Air Force. Romano lies out his tour and rotates back to the States. He never patents anything, never climbs past staff sergeant. He goes home with 7 confirmed kills and a back full of shrapnel. But the legacy of the mirror sight born in defiance, stained in sweat and smoke outlives him. It's the moment the American bomber force realizes something brutal and humbling. No doctrine, no command, no factory can outthink a man whose life depends on making something better. That's why the sight mattered. That's why tailgunners lived longer. That's why the bombers kept flying. And that, above all, is why Michael Romano mattered.